What fact sounds like BS but it's actually true? There is a fence in Australia that is longer than the distance from Nick to London. And that's not like a trick statement. It's a long fence. You can live for years with heart failure. The jet engine was actually invented before the ballpoint pen. The ball and ballpoint pens require some crazy precise engineering. They are little tungsten balls made so perfectly smooth that they can roll without leaking or catching. Pretty insane for something you can get in a 20 pack for a few bucks and usually lose before using for very long. The oldest woman to give birth was 72 years old. The youngest was a 5-year-old girl from Peru and the highest number of kids born at once was 8. It's nearly impossible to wipe out coyotes from an area. If you kill them, the females will begin to have bigger litters to balance it out. In some instances, even killing 70% of an area coyote population wasn't enough to stop them repopulating. The closest point to space on Earth isn't the summit of Everest. It's actually some stupid volcano in Ecuador. It's to do with a massive bulge in the Earth. It's to do with a massive bulge in the Earth. The largest volcano, and possibly mountain in general, in the solar system is Olympus Mons. On Mars. The cliffs at its base are already higher than Mt. Everest. And once you're on the slope, you can pretty much hike up into space. One of the earliest humans we know of by name, E.A. Nazir, is known because he was a shady merchant who sold low quality copper and had a special room in his house where he kept hate mails sent by people he'd swindled. This is especially noteworthy since they were written on clay tablets, which were valuable at the time and therefore were usually wiped clean and reused by the recipient. He went out of his way to keep and store records of how hated he was. Saudi Arabia imports their camels from Australia. T-Rex lived closer in time to us than it did to Stegosaurus. The Vatican contains 5.9 popes per square mile. The great Danish astronomer Tycho Brahe died in 1601 from being too polite. He tried to hold in his pee for a long dinner one night and his bladder burst. He died from pee poisoning a few days later. Cheetahs can't roar. They meow like cats, it's adorable. You can drive south from Detroit and reach Canada. Virginia reaches farther west than West Virginia. The westernmost point of Alaska is also the easternmost point of Alaska. If you see a picture of a starving kid with a disproportionately large belly, it doesn't mean the kid's been recently fed or overfed or anything like that. Most of the time it's abdominal edema caused by low protein intake. Yup. I know this because of World War II. When Holocaust concentration camps were liberated, Allied soldiers fed them with massive amounts of food. Medics came to them and told them to stop feeding them that much food. It was heartbreaking for the German-speaking soldiers. They had to tell them that they had to stop eating. It was a heartbreaking occasion and thing to do. The people in the concentration were used to eating very small amounts of food, and when they started eating massive amounts of food, they started dying. Giraffes can only make low bleating sounds because the path of evolution made it so that the vagus nerve, which controls the larynx, has to make a trip as long as 15 feet, from their brain, down around their heart, and back up again to the larynx. This is because in most creatures with short or no necks, the nerve only makes a very short detour to the heart and back. Evolution kept this set up, just lengthened the nerves. And now, it is believed, the trip is so long for giraffes that they have a small but noticeable delay in controlling parts of their head. So, even if they can make more sounds, they wouldn't be very good at it since intricate vocalizations require good muscle control. Despite widespread condemnation of the practice, performing pelvic exams on unconscious women for medical training, without explicit consent, is legal in 45 states. At one time in Britain, suicide was illegal and the punishment was. How anesthetics actually work is unknown. Mosquitoes are attracted to people who have recently eaten bananas. There are more iterations in a game of chess than there are atoms in the observable universe. Black holes take so long to die that not a single one has died since the beginning of the universe. Cleopatra's life was closer in time to the space shuttle than to the building of the pyramids. Anne Frank and Dr. Martin Luther King were born in the same year. The Australian Aboriginals have stories dating back to when humans lived alongside megafauna. Butterflies rely on their feet to taste food. There are more bones in gummy worms than in actual worms. Pelicans can push their spines out of their mouth. Edit. When life formed on Earth, Mars was actually more hospitable. And it was that for a long time. It is believed that Mars had lakes for billions of years. And rivers until 1 billion years ago. Sharks literally paralyze themselves when they swim upside down. Vikings were very well groomed and took regular washes. The Saxons wrote that Norsemen were charming too many Saxon women with their cleanliness. A chicken lived without a head for 18 months. We are closer to 2050 than 1990. I will be pressing charges for this assault. Nintendo was founded in 1889. If you have no debt and $20 in your hand, you are statistically richer than most Americans. And if you have no debt and $21 in your hand, you're statistically richer than everyone fitting the previous statistic. Ketchup actually started out as a medicine. Patient. Yeah doc. I got this stomach ache. Doctor. Rosa Parks lived long enough that it's entirely possible that she watched the first Shrek movie. Kangaroos have 3 vaginas. The fax machine dates back to 1846. That's facts lol. Pigs have a 30-minute orgasm. Your wife is very lucky lady. Your fingers don't have muscles in them. They are moved through muscles in your palm and forearm. Sharks are older than trees. Prove it. Cut open a shark and let's count the lines on the shark. Abe Lincoln's son fell partially off a train. And the man who saved him was John Wilkes Booth's older and better acting brother. Edit. Horse sperm is used in the creation of certain chemo drugs. Not certain if they are for humans or animals, but I used to transport 150 pounds vials of pure horse sperm from Peoria, IL to a lab in Chicago where it was then used in the process of drug creation. ISO 45020 is the standard that defines how standards are to be standardized. The shortest commercial flight in the world lasts just 57 seconds. Despite vehemently trapping and killing rats on the mainland, New Zealand has some of the world's only rat reserves. These reserves are dedicated to the Polynesian ship rat. Stars a couple times the mass of the sun die and explode in a supernova, leaving a neutron star or black hole. Stars with about a sun mass expand and then collapse, turning into white dwarfs. But what about those stars much smaller and lighter than the sun? Such as Proxima Centauri, the closest star to us. Or TRAPPIST-1? These red dwarfs, as they are called, never even expand and instead begin slowly collapsing at the end of their life, turning into a so-called black dwarf. Here's the kicker. Red dwarfs live extremely long, trillions and trillions of years, compared to our sun's measly 10 billion. And thus there has not gone enough time since the Big Bang for these black dwarfs to form. In 2008, before John F. Kennedy was president, he was the commander of the Part 109. It was sunk. Not because it was shot at. It sunk because a Japanese destroyer cut an entire boat in half. Kennedy and his crew were stranded, but help came and he lived on to finish the war and become the president. They actually made a movie about this. Figs aren't vegan. Unless you ignore the fact that you are eating dead wasps. Reno is further west than Los Angeles. The pyramids were as ancient to the Romans as Romans are to us. Hitler was saved by a Catholic priest when he was in a pool about to drown. Volume for volume. You radiate more energy than the sun. The province of Alberta in Canada does not have rats and has been rat-free for 70 years. Email is from the 1970s. Rosa Parks wasn't the first black person to refuse to give up her seat. She wasn't even the first in her state. The combined weight of all the ants on Earth is heavier than all the humans. Vatican City has the highest crime rate in the world. The rings of Saturn are only 30 feet thick. It varies from about 10 meters to 1 kilometer. Public housing was originally intended primarily for urban white people. It was considered good government because people for that were living in unsanitary conditions, and one of the few ways to bring dwellings to safety, clean water, electricity, plumbing, blah blah blah, was to have the government provide it. The Australians waged a war against birds. They lost decisively. Birds are dinosaurs. Not descended from dinosaurs. They're actually dinosaurs. You have more legs than the average human being. It would be more correct to say something along the lines of you have more legs than average for human beings. The concept of an average human is a thing and they would have 2 legs. Edit. Most people who wear bras are in the wrong size. In the US, many size charts will tell you to add 4 inches to your underbust. i.e. if you measure 32 inches, you're a size 36. That's not true. You're a 32. It's even worse when you get to European sizes. You have to subtract about 10 centimeters, 4 inches, when looking at size charts. If you measure 70 centimeters, the chart tells you that you're a size 70. That makes sense, right? But a size 70 is made to fit someone with an 80 centimeter underbust. Thanks to our bra that fits. I'm finally comfortable in my bras. If you haven't been there yet, check it out. Don't be afraid if your new size sounds different from what you're currently wearing. There is a theory concerning Phobos, the larger of Mars's 2 moons. The theory is that there was an original Phobos that was several times larger than the current one, but was broken up by Mars's gravity due to getting too close. Then the matter moved outwards and coalesced into a single object again. But some mass was inevitably lost, making the new object slightly smaller than the previous. When the new Phobos was formed, the cycle would start all over again. And thus today's Phobos may be third in a long cycle that is still continuing to this day. The next breakup will be in about 4 million years. And for a short time, Mars will have rings. Female mantises bite their male partners' heads off after sexual intercourse if they're starving or if the males irritated them. I have a resistance to being burned. I once unthinkingly grabbed a 450-degree cookie sheet without gloves. Held onto it for several seconds cause I didn't want to drop it. Slight red marks but nothing else. I once spilled boiling water from a tea kettle on my foot. Not a mark. Unfortunately. You better be a chef or a firefighter or wasting your talents. The average cloud weighs 550 tons. The inventor of the high five was a black. Male honeybees' testicles explode when they have an orgasm. And then they die. So if you were a male honeybee, you could only have sex once. Edit. Also the opposite of purple is yellow. Time slows down the faster you go. The Oxford University is older than the Aztec civilization. And Oxford isn't even the oldest university in the world. You technically have a time limit you can live. The amount of time you can hold your breath. You're just resetting it every time you breathe. Also, you never stop clapping. The pause in between just gets longer. You can fit 2 raccoons in your anus. Oh no. I'm not falling for this again.